Over the world, Wanyang. Guys, my name is Jim, and I have this good pleasure of being your docent, your guide, your host for this 75-minute architectural safari here in downtown Chicago. I got my safari hat. People have asked, I lived here most of my life, and I've lived in Humboldt Park, one of the many neighborhoods I live, and I have had the pleasure of showing off my city like this for the past 11 seasons. I love this job because I love Chicago, and I'm hoping you guys fall in love with Chicago. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna bring my A game. I want everybody to get their money's worth today. We're gonna do 4 things. First, we're gonna talk about my favorite subject, which is beauty. You guys are gonna see a beautiful city, but we're gonna talk about how beauty is so powerful that it can influence people and shape culture. Second, we're going to talk about the evolution of architecture. You're going to see that each generation takes its cultural values and expresses them in 3 dimensions. We're going to decode old buildings. They're going to tell us what was going on. Third, we're going to nerd out. I have an engineering degree I'm not using, so it's going to be nerds for a little bit. And fourth, we're going to tell some stories. Everyone loves story time. And finally, have a boatload of fun. Guys, can I reinforce something? Our captain asked if we can keep our side conversations to a minimum so as to not disrupt other folks around us, okay? Let's get started. How about this white building right here? This is the iconic personal favorite Wrigley Building. Early 1920s, Spanish revival, modeled after a cathedral in Sevilla, Spain. Now, our question on this smart tour quest, because you guys are wicked smart back there, Boston, our question is why? Why were they building buildings that look like European cathedrals and palaces here in Chicago in the early 1920s? Well, it's because the young United States didn't know what our own style of beauty was. We were still copying and pasting beauty from Europe. It wasn't until later we came to our own founding groove. Next building in front of us, the spectacular Trump International Hotel and Tower. Second tallest building in Chicago, high-end residence and hotel, 2009, and a pretty good example of one of the architectural styles that we're going to talk quite a bit about today, and it's called contextualism. Check this out. Look up there with me. See these 3 patio terraces? They're called setbacks. They are not arbitrary heights because they are each at the height of a neighboring building. The first patio where the Trump sign is, same height of the roof of the white Wrigley building we just talked about. Second patio on the left, look across the river, same height of the white rocket ship shaped building. Third patio up on the right, same height of the black box building on the other side. So what I'm saying, it's acknowledging its 3 neighbors' heights. Isn't that cool? Site-specific designs intentionally meant to flatter the context. Contextualism. Now the architect, we're gonna have to stop. Nope, the other way. I just have a kayak that just discombobulated there. It's okay. Now the architect of Trump Tower is one of Chicago's most famous and beloved architects, a guy named Adrian Smith. Now we all call him the world's tallest architect. Seriously, he comes in at the staggering height of 5 feet 7 inches. We call him that because he makes the tallest buildings in the world, including the current tallest. If you're here from Brazil to buy a skyscraper, a penthouse, this one sold for $20 million a couple of summers ago. That's a nice little starter home for somebody. Over to the right, eyes up, cameras up, you'll see the twin iconic corn-cob towers of Marina City. These are pie-shaped apartments, each with their lobed balconies. I got a buddy who lives up there. A little difficult to furnish a triangular-shaped living room. Now, here's its story. In the mid-1960s, practically nobody was living in the city center. You worked downtown, but you didn't live there. You went home. Well, there was an architect, a Chicago architect named Bertrand Goldberg. He was kind of the social scientist of his generation because he wanted people to live in the city center like they did in Europe where he studied. But there was no infrastructure for residential living downtown. So he had to build a self-sufficient city within a city where you can live above your luxury yacht. Y'all got one of those. Lived above your valet parked car, your own restaurant, your own movie theater, your own hotel, office space. Truly a city within a city. It's an introvert's dream world. Live, work, and play in your pajamas. Over to the left, our Riverwalk. This Riverwalk, guys, just a few years old, has been a game changer for Chicago's relationship to this river, because it's bringing citizens down to the river as never before. In fact, you get citizens this close to the water, they get a lot more concerned about the water quality and the ecosystems and good for the river. Over to the left, see the bottom of this white granite building with the mirrored glass. As it comes fully into view, follow it all the way up to the top, and you'll see what looks like a Greek temple up there. See it? Name of that style, neoclassic. You take something classic, like the Parthenon, remake it with new materials, clarifying key proportions, a classic 30-degree pitch of the roof up there. This particular building is designed by the late Ricardo Bofill from Catalan, Spain, Barcelona, one of the few international architects represented on the river. Here's some, for those of you from out of town, which I think is most everybody, the part of town to your, here's some orienting vocabulary. The part of town to your left is called the Loop. You may have heard that term, let me explain it. Our subway system, the trains are called the L because many of them are elevated and they literally make a loop in the core business district. So the city center is called the Loop. People are living in the Loop though these days. Mind blowing. You know, Chicago is located here because of this river. In the mid-1800s, this little Chicago River was the waterway that connected the East Coast to the Mississippi River. That's back when things were shipped by barges and schooners. So lots of merchandise came through Chicago, and it's been a hub of commerce ever since. Planes, trains, semi-trailers all coming through Chicago. So we're learning about the evolution of architecture. If our first style, Wrigley Building, Spanish Revival, looking at Europe's cathedral past early 20s, here's our second style. This huge building is called Art Deco. Now, Art Deco, guys, was made for a different generation. This is the late 1920s. That's the roaring 20s, the jazz age. A time of prosperity, luxury, airplane travel, sophistication. They wanted an architecture that expressed that financial optimism. And Art Deco is just that, because each generation takes its cultural values and expresses them in three dimensions. We're decoding old buildings and telling us what was going on. Here's the characteristics you always see in an Art Deco building. It always has these deep inset dark windows with these soaring vertical racing stripes that draws your eye up, up, up. Stair steps, setbacks, polished Indiana limestone, precision repetitive patterns. Art Deco. The heads on the posts, I know they look like Pez dispensers. Those are the old merchandisers that shopped at the merchandise wholesale market. Sears, Wanamaker, Filene, Montgomery Ward, Marshall Field, Woolworth, and Jeff Bezos's of the day. Eyes up, cameras up, guys. As we come under the bridge, we're coming into what's called Wolf Point. And here is where you're going to see 360 degrees of amazing. Okay, this is kind of the trophy case of Chicago's architecture, because everything you see around here new within the last 5 or 6 years. Salesforce building just opened last summer, 5-year-old curved building, 7-year-old Y-shaped building. It's nerdy, so we'll talk about it. Everything is new except for this guy to the sharp left. It may look contemporary. This one's from 1983, and it's an excellent example of contextualism. The curve of that reflective glass building not only imitates the curve of the river, it reflects and flatters the context. Contextualism, by the way, one of Chicagoans' favorite buildings. You know why? Because this is where Ferris Bueller's dad worked in that iconic Chicago documentary that was based on a true story, as far as we know. We are here at Wolf Point. This is the junction of the three branches of the Chicago River. We've come down the main branch. We're turning now. We're going to go up the north branch a little bit, and down the south branch. Wolf Point, the origin of the cradle of the town of Chicago, 1830s. That's where it all started. All right, guys, see the curved building, office building, parabolic slice out of the top and bottom. True story, 2 years ago, a little boy named the building for us, calls it the Hot Pocket Building. Can you see why it kind of looks like a, although I think it looks more like a McDonald's cherry pie box. But as we curve to the north, our next building, this peach-colored box, is called Fulton House, the oldest we'll see on the river, 1898. Here's its story. In the first half of the 1900s, Fulton House had no windows. It was a giant cold storage freezer building for the meat packing business. Well, that business goes away in the 70s. In fact, they say it took about 3 months for the old building to thaw out. And as they cut through those 3-foot thick walls to make the balconies and windows, they discovered the walls had been stuffed with matted horsehair and cork. That's what they used as insulation. Over to the right, the bridge. This is a 1908 landmark bridge, means you can't tear it down, and it exposes how all these Chicago-style bridges work. Guys, think of a teeter-totter, a seesaw. That's how much of a concrete counterweight you need to balance this much steel. All the other bridges balance like that. Yes, they open and close. We'll talk about them. Over to the left, look at the interesting triangular-shaped postmodern river cottages. These are 4 vertical residences, 5-story, 4-story, obviously very goofy shaped. In fact, in 1989, when Harry Weiss, the architect, made these, people thought Harry Weiss was kind of crazy. And it's not just for the unique shape of the building, but for even having cottages on the north branch of the Chicago River. Because the north branch was kind of the stinky, smelly, industrial branch. Why would anyone want to live up here? But he helped Chicago change its attitude and its behavior towards the river. It's been cleaned up significantly since the 80s and become both recreational, this is where my wife and I rent kayaks in the summer, and residential. See some nice townhomes over here to the left. All right, quick check-in, guys. How we all doing? Good? Okay. You can all hear. Here's what's going to happen. Our Captain Greg's going to go up here and do the first of 3 U-turns. This time we're going to head down the South Branch, more fun stuff to see. I'm going to get off the mic, walk around, see if you got any questions, make sure you can hear okay. Good time for you to go back and see Andrew at the bar. Beer, wine, mixed drinks, soda pop, it's hot out. Keep yourselves hydrated. We'll get started in just a little bit. Of the Great Chicago Fire. You may have heard we had a really big fire with the cow and the lantern and Mrs. Catherine O'Leary. Now to tell that story properly, we're going to separate the tragic facts from the comic fiction, and the facts are these. 1871, 153 years ago, October 8th, Sunday night, 9 p.m., a fire breaks out in Mrs. Catherine O'Leary's barn, a few blocks to your right. No one knows how. The problem was the wind. Guys, it was a 30-mile-an-hour storm wind from the southwest, which creates this firestorm of horizontal flames that literally jumped across the river twice. People running for their lives as the fire chased them. Now, wooden buildings falling like dominoes in flames behind them. Now, the fire raged for 3 days, and by the time it was done, it burned out more than 17,000 buildings. That's a big number. Left more than 100,000 people, no home, no possessions, killed 300 people, could be more, and burned out 3.5 square miles of the city center. Everything you've seen was burned out by that fire. Those are the tragic facts. The fiction is a lot more playful than that, and it comes in with, how did the fire start? And in the end, nobody really knows, okay? That's why there are myths and legends. Now, we do know a few things. 1, we know that it started with Mrs. Catherine O'Leary's barn. 2, we know she was an Irish Catholic immigrant. 3, we know she owned a cow. And 4, we know that the city was angry. The city was looking to blame somebody, looking for a scapegoat. And of all people, they blamed her Her cow, can you believe it, of all people, they said Mrs. Catherine O'Leary's cow intentionally and maliciously kicked over a kerosene lantern which started the fire. Now, personally, I don't think it's true. I've known plenty of Irish cows. They wouldn't do that on purpose. I think the cow was framed. I think the city just needed a scapegoat. Cow. She started it. I think it was a cowspiracy. I think it's utterly unjust. Ooh, stay with me. The city had a beef with Mrs. O'Leary. Come on, guys. She pretty much had to hoof it out of town. Now, this is what I heard. Now, holy cow, or cowabunga, I know there was a lot at stake. But I think it's time Chicago stop milking this cheesy story and stop crying over spilt lanterns and move on. That's the end of the tale. Come on. The fire. By the way, on the whole, only 2% of the people like cow jokes, but we'll skim past that. The fire. That's the best one. Was the worst thing, and some people think it was one of the best things to happen in Chicago. The first city in Chicago burned down. This is the second city. It's one of the reasons it gets the nickname the second city. It rose up out of the ashes of the old. So there's our first story. A story of destruction. Here's the second story. 22 short years after the fire had destroyed the city, Chicago had rebuilt itself well enough to be able to host the World's Fair of 1893. That's a pretty good comeback in 22 years. Now, the guy they put in charge was important. He was a young architect. His name was Daniel Burnham. He's kind of the visionary, heroic architect of Chicago. Excuse me. Because he oversaw the design and build. That's just adorable. Major distraction. They put him in charge of building the campus for the World's Fair. Imagine this campus that he built, 200 temporary buildings that looked as if Venice, Italy, or Athens, or Paris had been imported and painted white. This classic European-style beauty. This magical kingdom. This glowing utopia that was meant to inspire people with its beauty. Literally, inspire people with its beauty. You see, because this is important. Daniel Burnham was part of a philosophy of architecture in the late 1800s called the City Beautiful movement. What do you guys think of this? Because I think it's true. They believed that beautiful cities, that beauty itself has this inspiring, civilizing, dignifying effect on people. That beauty affects us, shapes culture, makes us better people. I think it's true. A lot of people came. That fair was important, guys, because it put Chicago back on the map after the fire. It inspired the city, gave us a desire for more beauty.